the order of the stories, because I believe these stories were written over a different period of time. They're compiled. So can we talk about the ordering, the hows and the whys, and the general? Yeah,
The order is roughly in the order in which they were written. So
standard.
the 10 stories encompass 10 years from 2015 to 2024. And the very first story, Biodome, was written in 2015. I still remember I wrote that in one weekend, and it was one of the first times I was still trying to gain my footing as a literary fiction writer.
Mm.
And it opened a lot of doors for me, that story. It has been optioned to be adapted into film, which is very exciting. And I look at the list of contents, and each story brings me back to the time in my life where I wrote this and when. The second story is from a trip to the south of France in 2019. A Woman's Life in 10 Scenes, also later in 2019. The South African story, just a little bit before that in 2018, but mostly, again, chronological until the final story, the title story that you mentioned in your intro, A Love Story from the End of the World,
Mm.
which was the penultimate story that I wrote. I actually
Okay.
wrote the very autobiographical sounding Notting Hill just days before I had to turn in the manuscript. And they had already made me an offer for the book based on 9 stories. And they said, stop writing. And I
Mm.
said, wait, but I have a really great idea. I really want to add a 10th story. So I wrote the Notting Hill story as a more romantic story, but ended on a note of of that moving, that poignancy that you mentioned, which is why the title story ended up being the final one.